Imagine being stripped of everything you've ever known, your family, your home, your dignity. You're herded like cattle into a concentration camp, surrounded by death, cruelty, and suffering. You watch as the people you love are torn from your life. Amid this horror, you face the hardest question of all: why keep going? Why survive when everything seems lost? This was Viktor Frankl's reality, and out of the unimaginable torment of the Holocaust, he discovered something extraordinary, a universal truth about what it means to live with purpose. Early life. A question of meaning. Viktor Emil Frankl was born in Vienna in 1905. Vienna at that time was a city buzzing with intellectual energy, a hub of philosophical and psychological thought. Freud was revolutionizing the way people understood the mind, and for Frankl, the ideas swirling around him sparked an early fascination with psychology. But unlike Freud, who focused on the drives of pleasure and pain, Frankl was drawn to deeper questions. From a young age, he wondered, what makes life truly worth living? Why do some people, even in hardship, hold on to hope, while others crumble? In high school, he wrote an essay that explored this very question, and it was so insightful that he sent it to Freud himself. Freud was impressed enough to publish it, yet Frankl found himself diverging from Freud's teachings. He was drawn to a different thinker, Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher who believed that life's meaning comes from facing suffering and making choices. By his early 20s, Frankl's work began to reflect this deeper search for meaning. He believed that every human, regardless of circumstance, had the power to find purpose, even in the face of suffering. Life, he wrote, means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. But he could never have imagined how his own philosophy would be put to the ultimate test. The rise of Nazi Germany. A world in turmoil. In the 1930s, Europe was on the brink of war, and Frankl was deep in his medical studies. By 1938, Hitler's regime had annexed Austria, and Vienna's once thriving Jewish community was being torn apart. Frankl, a practicing psychiatrist, was already developing his theory of logotherapy, which emphasized the need for individuals to find meaning in their lives. He was working with patients who were suicidal, and rather than focusing solely on their symptoms, he would ask, "What gives your life meaning? What keeps you from giving up?" At the same time, he was negotiating with the US to secure a visa, an escape route from the growing dangers in Europe. He was offered a visa, but then, at a critical moment, he hesitated. His parents were still in Vienna. Could he really leave them behind? Frankl recalls a pivotal moment in his decision-making process. He went to St. Stephen's Cathedral, struggling to make a choice, and when he returned home, he found a piece of marble on the table. His father explained that it had come from a synagogue destroyed by the Nazis. It was engraved with one of the 10 Commandments, "Honor thy father and thy mother." Frankl took it as a sign. He chose to stay with his parents, even though it meant facing the horrors that were about to unfold. The camps. An unimaginable hell. In 1942, the nightmare began. Frankl, along with his wife, Tilly, and his parents, were deported to the Theresienstadt concentration camp. It was the start of a journey into the darkest depths of human cruelty. Frankl was eventually transferred to Auschwitz, one of the most infamous death camps, where his wife, father, mother, and brother all perished. Frankl was reduced to a mere number, 119,104, and every day he witnessed the brutality of life in the camps. People starved, froze, and succumbed to disease. Some were shot for no reason. Others took their own lives, unable to bear the weight of despair. But even in this unimaginable hell, Frankl was searching. He had spent years studying meaning, and now he was living the very questions he had been asking his entire life. When we are no longer able to change a situation, he wrote, we are challenged to change ourselves. In the freezing darkness of the barracks, amid the stench of death, Frankl had an epiphany. He imagined himself standing in front of an audience, lecturing on the psychology of the camps. His mind reached forward, beyond the barbed wire, and he realized, even here, in this misery, I can find meaning. He came to believe that the difference between those who survived and those who didn't was not simply a matter of physical endurance. It was a matter of purpose. If there is meaning in life at all, he later wrote, then there must be meaning in suffering. Suffering is an ineradicable part of life, even as fate and death. Without suffering and death, human life cannot be complete. Surviving through purpose. The choice of attitude. Frankl began to notice that some prisoners survived not because they were physically stronger, but because they had something to live for, a thought, a dream, a memory. He often quoted Friedrich Nietzsche's words, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." One day, he and a fellow prisoner were marching to a work site in the freezing cold, their feet bleeding from frostbite. His friend whispered, "If our wives could see us now. I do hope they are better off in their camps, and don't know what is happening to us." In that moment, Frankl realized that thinking of his wife gave him the strength to endure. Memory of her became his purpose, his why, though he didn't know if she was alive or dead. The thought of reuniting with her kept him going. As the war dragged on, Frankl clung to his philosophy that, even in the worst of circumstances, we have the freedom to choose our attitude. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, he wrote, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Liberation and loss. The cost of survival. In 1945, Frankl was liberated from the concentration camps. But his freedom came at a devastating cost. His beloved wife, Tilly, had been killed. His parents were gone, most of his family had perished. He was one of the few who survived. How does someone go on after losing everything? For Frankl, it came back to the very core of his beliefs, meaning, he could not change what had happened, but he could choose how to respond. In the face of unimaginable loss, he threw himself into his work. He knew that his survival had to mean something more. His suffering had to be transformed into something that could help others. The legacy of logotherapy. A global influence. After the war, Frankl returned to Vienna and poured his heart into his writing. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, was published in 1946 and became a beacon of hope for millions around the world. In it, Frankl interweaves his personal experiences in the Holocaust with the psychological principles of logotherapy. His message was simple but profound. Life has meaning, even in the most brutal circumstances. He didn't preach that life would always be fair or free from pain. Instead, he argued that we have the power to find meaning in any situation, and it was this meaning that gave life its worth. Frankl's work resonated deeply because it wasn't just theory, it was lived experience. He had faced the worst of human cruelty, yet he emerged with an unshakable belief in the power of the human spirit. He spent the rest of his life spreading this message, lecturing, writing, and practicing psychiatry. His words have touched millions, guiding people through their darkest moments. Viktor Frankl's enduring message. Viktor Frankl's story is more than one of survival. It's a testament to the strength of the human soul. He taught the world that even when everything is taken from you, your freedom, your family, your dignity, there is one thing that can never be taken, the power to choose your own way. In his words, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by a lack of meaning and purpose. So, as you walk your own path and face your own struggles, remember Viktor Frankl's legacy. Ask yourself, what is your purpose? What is the why that keeps you moving forward? Because no matter how tough life gets, If you have a reason to live, you can survive anything. That's the key to finding what truly matters.
Through the storm we rise, tears become our guide, hardship in disguise, purpose by our side.
If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more content on discovering what truly matters to you. Remember, the search for purpose is a journey we all have, and you're not alone. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder of their own purpose. Drop a comment below about what gives your life meaning, or how you've found purpose in your own challenges. Your story might be what someone needs to hear today. Thanks for watching.